On the distant frontier world of Calaros, a quiet Sunday service is shattered when a 12-foot crimson dragon walks into the temple, sits in the back pew, and listens as if it belongs there. No one knows why it came, where it came from, or why its golden eyes seem fixed on the pastor alone. But when the service ends, the dragon doesn't leave. It beckons him to follow. What waits beyond the safety of the colony is a secret older than humanity itself, and a choice that could change the fate of two worlds forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The morning light over the frontier world of Calaros filtered through the tall windows of the Temple of Dawn's Passage, casting long golden beams across the stone floor. Pastor Alden Graythorne stood at the entrance, his plain ceremonial robe stirring gently in the steady current of recycled air that kept the colony's atmosphere flowing. After 12 years guiding the settlers of Bright Reach through harsh seasons, equipment breakdowns, and strange wildlife encounters, he thought he had seen it all. But nothing had prepared him for the sight that waited inside. The first thing anyone noticed about the dragon was not its size, though it stood nearly 12 feet tall. It was not the deep crimson scales that shimmered like molten metal under Calaros's twin suns. No, it was the way the dragon sat quietly in the third pew from the back, wings folded neatly, head lowered slightly, as if it had simply come for the morning service. Deacon Marlowe, a thin, restless man with sharp features, stepped close to Alden. "Should I call security?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Alden's eyes stayed on the dragon. "And tell them what? That a dragon decided to attend worship? They'd think we've lost our senses." Colonists filtered in one by one, and as each spotted the great creature, reactions rippled across the room. Some froze in place, others stepped back toward the door, and a few could not help but stare. Whispers darted through the air. "Is it dangerous?" someone asked quietly. "Don't make eye contact," another muttered. The dragon slowly turned its head toward Alden. A single golden eye locked with his, steady and unblinking. The look was not hostile, yet it held a weight that made his skin prickle. Then, to Alden's disbelief, the dragon dipped its head in a slow, deliberate nod, almost as if to say, "Go on." From the far aisle, head botanist Mara Selwyn entered, clutching a small prayer book. Her usual composure vanished, and the book slipped from her hands, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. Professor Joran Blackwell, the colony's resident xenobiologist, stepped forward with narrowed eyes. "Remarkable," he murmured. "This matches no confirmed species. The old survey reports claimed such creatures were only myths. Perhaps they were wrong." While most kept their distance, a small figure broke from the crowd. Leora, a 7-year-old with boundless curiosity, approached the dragon without hesitation. Her soft footsteps echoed in the quiet sanctuary. "Are you here for the singing?" she asked, tilting her head. "My teacher says I sing like a broken weather unit, but I think she just doesn't like my songs." A few gasps rose from the congregation. Alden's heart tightened. The dragon lowered its head until its eyes met Leora's. For one tense moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then the creature exhaled, a warm breath scented faintly with something like cinnamon and rain after a storm. It ruffled Leora's hair but did nothing else. "See?" Leora announced proudly. "He's nice." She turned to Alden. "Can we keep him?" Alden cleared his throat, forcing his voice steady. "Perhaps we should continue the service. Everyone, please take your seats." The worship began, though no one could quite keep their eyes from the dragon. Alden delivered a sermon about hope in the face of the unknown, all the while aware of the dragon's gaze fixed upon him. It seemed to follow every word. When hymns were sung, the dragon emitted a low, resonant hum that blended strangely with the human voices, making the windows faintly vibrate. During the silent meditation, it closed its eyes, sitting as still as carved stone. Colonel Halden Ricks, the military liaison, leaned toward his wife in the pew ahead. "We should evacuate. One flick of its tail and this place is rubble." "Look at it," she whispered back. "It's practically attending the sermon better than you do." When the final prayer ended, the congregation left slowly, glancing back again and again. Alden remained near the altar, watching as the dragon stayed in its place, unmoving until the last person had gone. Then it stood, stretching its wings slightly before folding them once more. It walked with deliberate steps toward the door, but paused, turning to look directly at Alden. The meaning was unmistakable. It wanted him to come along. Alden's mind raced. There was council business, counseling appointments, and other duties waiting. But there was also the fact that a dragon had just joined a religious service and now seemed to be inviting him somewhere. The pastor drew a slow breath. "Deacon Marlowe," he called, "cancel my appointments for the day. Tell them I'm attending to an important matter." Marlowe appeared at the doorway, still pale. "With the dragon?" "Especially with the dragon," Alden said. As the great creature turned again toward the sunlight outside, Alden felt the stirrings of something he hadn't experienced in years, an old sense of wonder mixed with the uneasy thrill of stepping into the unknown. This was not a morning anyone in Brightreach would soon forget, and somehow he knew his life was about to change forever. The dragon stepped out into the pale morning light, its crimson scales gleaming with every measured movement. Pastor Alden Graythorne followed, unsure whether his decision was guided by reason or the pull of curiosity. The streets of Brightreach were already stirring with activity. Settlers carrying goods from the market, technicians repairing transport cables, and children playing in the shaded alleys. All of it came to a halt as the sight of the dragon spread through the colony, like a sudden wind. It moved with a surprising grace for its size, each step placed carefully to avoid the irrigation channels and delicate planters lining the walkways. Alden noticed that even its wings folded tightly to avoid brushing against the walls of nearby buildings. It was as if the dragon had walked these streets before, memorizing every turn. People emerged from doorways, drawn by the low thud of heavy claws on stone. Some raised recording devices to capture the sight, while others simply stared, their faces caught between awe and fear. From the doorway of the medical center, Dr. Naomi Vestal called out, "Pastor, should I have the burn unit ready?" Her tone was light, but her eyes stayed locked on the dragon. "Let's hope it won't be needed," Alden replied, his voice steady though his heart was not. The dragon kept a slow pace, never straying far from the pastor. It crossed the open plaza where the colony's main fountain sprayed recycled water into the air. The droplets caught the sunlight, scattering tiny rainbows that danced across the dragon's scales. Children, unable to resist, ran alongside, pointing and laughing, while parents reached out to pull them back. As they passed the industrial quarter, the deep clang of ore processors filled the air. The dragon's head turned toward the sound, nostrils flaring, but it did not slow. Workers in heavy suits stepped aside, some bowing instinctively, as though sensing they stood in the presence of something ancient and important. Beyond the quarter, the streets narrowed and the air grew cooler. Here, the colony's edge came into view. Beyond the last row of weather-worn buildings lay the untamed crystal forests of Calaros. The sight was always striking. Towers of translucent mineral rising from the ground like frozen lightning, each refracting the twin suns into shifting ribbons of color. The dragon paused at the boundary, glancing back at Alden, as if to be sure he was still willing to follow. The pastor hesitated, then gave a single nod. Together they stepped from the safety of the colony into the wild. The air seemed different here, carrying a faint hum that was more felt than heard. The ground crunched beneath their feet, a mixture of dust and shards that glittered like glass. Alden's robe caught on a jagged edge, and he freed it carefully, realizing how unprepared he was for any kind of journey. Yet the dragon moved with the certainty of one who knew exactly where it was going. They wound through narrow corridors of crystal, some formations rising higher than the tallest colony towers. Light scattered in shifting patterns across the dragon's body, making it appear as though it wore armor made of sunlight. At times, the crystals gave off faint pulses of color, as if reacting to the creature's presence. An hour passed. Alden's feet began to ache, the hard ground offering no relief. He wondered if they would stop soon, but the dragon pressed on without pause. Still, the pastor could not bring himself to turn back. There was a sense that each step carried him closer to something extraordinary. Something that might explain why a dragon had walked into his temple and listened to a sermon. Finally, the path opened into a clearing. At its center stood a structure unlike anything Alden had ever seen. It appeared to be grown rather than built, shaped from the same crystalline material as the forest, but molded into sweeping walls, archways, and delicate curves. The building shimmered faintly, as though lit from within by a soft, living glow. Alden stopped, staring. "This wasn't in any survey report," he said aloud, his voice carrying softly in the stillness. The dragon approached the entrance, which was formed from two arcs of crystal that met in a point above. It lowered its head and pushed the door open with surprising delicacy. The pastor stood at the threshold, the interior glowing in warm tones that contrasted with the sharp brightness outside. His heart beat faster, each pulse echoing in his ears. Whatever lay beyond that doorway. It was clear the dragon had brought him here for a reason. Taking a steadying breath, Alden stepped inside. The air was cooler, scented faintly with minerals and something like rain on dry earth. Every surface seemed alive, the walls flowing in natural patterns that caught the light and sent it dancing across the room. But it wasn't the architecture that caught his attention most. It was the sense, deep and undeniable, that this place was meant to be found only by those invited. And in that moment, he realized he was not just following a dragon. He was following a path into a story far older and larger than anything he had imagined. The moment Pastor Alden Graythorne stepped inside, his eyes adjusted to the dim glow that filled the crystal-walled chamber. The air felt still, yet somehow alive, as if the walls themselves were listening. The floor under his boots was smooth and cool, shaped from the same shimmering mineral that formed the forest outside. The space was larger than it had seemed from the outside. Every surface curved gracefully, giving the impression that the structure had grown from the earth rather than been built by hand. Faint pulses of light traveled along the walls, fading and brightening like the slow beat of a living heart. In the center of the room stood objects unmistakably designed for human use. There was a table carved from translucent stone, its edges glimmering faintly, and a chair shaped to fit the human form, yet made of the same unyielding crystal. The mix of alien beauty and familiar shapes made the place feel strange and welcoming at the same time. Along one wall, Alden saw shelves lined with small objects. Some looked like tools, others resembled sculptures, and a few were so alien in form he could not guess their purpose. But it was the far wall that drew him closer. Covering the smooth surface were dozens of printed photographs, actual paper prints. Rare in the colony, where almost everything was stored digitally. The images were faded at the edges, but still clear. In nearly every one, the crimson dragon stood beside a woman. She appeared middle-aged, with streaks of silver in her hair, and an expression both kind and determined. In one photograph, she sat in the crystal chair, reading from a book while the dragon curled around her feet. In another, they stood by the edge of a lake, the water reflecting their shapes in shimmering detail. In several, she laughed openly, while the dragon seemed to be mid-sentence, its mouth open in a way that looked like speaking. Alden stepped closer, his breath catching. He knew her face. "Serenia Vale," he whispered. Serenia had been one of the colony's brightest minds, a linguist and researcher who had arrived on Calaros to study any signs of intelligent life. She had vanished 3 years ago, believed to have been killed in a landslide while conducting research in the crystal forests. Her body was never found. The dragon, still standing near the doorway, made a soft, low sound that resonated through the chamber. It was a sound filled with weight and memory. Alden's eyes were drawn to a leather-bound journal resting on the crystal table. Its surface was worn, the edges creased from years of use. He opened it carefully. The handwriting inside was precise and flowing. Serenia's. Her first entries described her arrival in the forest, noting unusual patterns in thermal readings and strange hums in the air. As the pages continued, her tone changed. Day 147. Communication established. They are not animals. They are the original people of this world, the keepers of its balance. They call themselves guardians in their own language, though it's not a word so much as a tone that carries meaning. The Crimson One, I call him Embercrest, is curious about us. He wishes to understand our gatherings, our songs, and our rituals. Alden read on, his hands trembling slightly. Day 324. Embercrest has shown me visions of the world before humans arrived. Vast cities of crystal, humming in harmony with the planet's magnetic field. They do not use technology as we know it. Their knowledge is part of the planet itself. They withdrew to the deep caverns when our ships came, unsure if we would harm the balance they've kept for centuries. Alden looked up at the dragon, who watched him silently. The pastor could feel the weight of its gaze, a quiet urging for him to understand. He turned another page. Day 580. I have agreed to a process they possess, though they do not call it science, which allows a merging of consciousness. It is not death. It is transformation. It will allow me to serve as a bridge between humans and guardians. Our colony cannot survive here if we ignore the planet's nature. If we grow without harmony, Calaros will reject us, the way a body rejects a foreign object. Alden closed the journal for a moment, his mind struggling to absorb the meaning. Serenia was not gone. She had chosen to change, to join these beings in some way beyond human understanding. Is this why you came for me? He asked quietly. The dragon stepped forward, its claws clicking softly against the smooth floor. It lowered its head, holding Alden's gaze for a long moment before giving a single, deliberate nod. Alden's thoughts tumbled over one another. If what Serenia had written was true, then the colony's future depended on someone willing to follow her path. But what did that truly mean? To merge with them? To give up the life he had always known? He looked once more at the photographs on the wall. In each one, there was no fear between the woman and the dragon, only trust. The low hum from the walls seemed to deepen, as though the very structure shared the dragon's quiet expectation. Alden knew that whatever happened next would carry him far beyond the safety of his temple or the routines of his D, and somewhere deep inside, he sensed that this was not just about him or the colony. It was about the survival of something far older than either. The dragon turned from the table and moved toward the far side of the chamber. Its claws tapped lightly on the smooth crystal floor, each step deliberate, as if leading a ritual. Pastor Alden Graythorne followed, the quiet hum in the air pressing at his senses. They stopped before a section of wall that looked solid, its surface rippling faintly with the same soft light as the rest of the structure. Without hesitation, the dragon pressed one clawed forelimb against the wall. The crystal shimmered, and then, as if melting into transparency, it revealed a world beyond, a vast cavern lit with a glow that seemed to come from the walls, the ceiling, and the ground all at once. Alden's breath caught. Spread out before him was a city unlike anything he had imagined. Towering crystal spires rose in graceful arcs, their surfaces alive with shifting color. Pathways wound between them, and along those paths moved dragons of every size and shade: sapphire blue, emerald green, pearl white, obsidian black. Some glided on great wings, while others walked with slow dignity. The air inside the cavern vibrated with a deep harmonic sound, not noise, but music woven into the space itself. It was beautiful and strange, and it reached into Alden's chest like a living thing. And then he saw her. Standing on a raised platform of glowing crystal was Serenia Vale. She looked unchanged from the photographs, her silver-streaked hair gathered loosely, her eyes bright and steady. She wore flowing robes made from a material that seemed to shift its color with each movement. Dragons gathered close around her, their heads lowered, listening as she spoke. As if sensing him, she turned toward the wall. Their eyes met across the impossible distance, and she smiled. Her lips moved silently. ... shaping a single word that Alden could not hear, but somehow felt. Before he could react, the crystal wall shimmered again and returned to its opaque state, sealing the vision away. Alden stepped back, unsteady. "She's alive," he whispered. The dragon, Embercrest, watched him without blinking. Then it moved to the table again, using its claw to open the journal to a later page. Alden leaned forward and read. Day 890. The transformation is nearly complete. The Guardians can join a human's mind to their crystal network, creating a shared awareness. It is not the end of a life, but an evolution of it. I have chosen to take this step so that I can speak for both worlds. Caliros is not simply a planet to be claimed. It is a living entity. The Guardians are its protectors. If we expand without understanding, the planet will reject us. Someone must help both sides see the need for balance. Alden's hands rested on the open book. The meaning was clear. Serenia had not been taken or low. She had chosen to become part of something greater. You brought me here because it's time, Alden said slowly. Embercrest lowered its head in agreement. Alden looked around the chamber. Every curve of the walls, every faint pulse of light seemed to echo the dragon's silent request. This was not about him alone. It was about the fragile future of the colony, about bridging the gulf between two ways of life. He stepped toward the wall that had shown him the cavern. His hand touched the cool crystal. For a moment, he thought he felt a vibration under his fingers, subtle, rhythmic, like a distant voice speaking in a language just beyond his understanding. a deep calm settled over him. He did not yet know the path ahead or what it would cost, but he understood the choice. The dragon turned toward the doorway, waiting. Alden let his hand rest on the crystal one moment longer, the faint pulse answering in his palm. Then he faced Embercrest. "Show me," he said. The dragon's golden eyes glinted with something that might have been approval. Together, they stepped out of the chamber and into the shimmering forest beyond, the air alive with color and the hum of the unseen city below. Somewhere beneath the ground, in a place few had ever glimpsed, the guardians were waiting, and now, so was he. And as they walked back toward the edge of the forest, Alden could not shake the quiet certainty growing in his mind. He had already begun to hear the voice of Calaros itself.